Hello again, chaps and chapettes. How are we all doing? It is lovely to see you all again. As always, I want to address something with you tonight, guys. Something that's been happening for quite a while now. You tend to see it a lot on various social media platforms such as X, Facebook, Instagram, that kind of a thing. And it's people phoning, clamouring, begging, praying for Boris Johnson to return as leader of the Conservative Party, which I think in itself is an utterly ludicrous idea. We will get into why in just a few short moments after we skip through this article about the subject on GB News' website. Boris Johnson's potential return to frontline politics faces an enormous obstacle in the form of Nigel Farage, allies of the former British Prime Minister have told GB News. Johnson, who recently admitted to the People's Channel that he is not convinced he is in a position to return as Tory leader at the moment, needs to find a safe seat if he has any hope of completing a Churchill-style comeback. That's the thing with Boris Johnson. He prides himself and models himself off Winston Churchill. Can you imagine Boris Johnson leading this country in a fucking world war? My good God, not a fucking chance. However, only a handful of Johnson loyalists still hold seats in Westminster, with even fewer appearing likely to leave to facilitate the ex-Prime Minister's return. A number of Johnson's long-standing allies vacated the House of Commons ahead of the 2024 general election, including former Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries and ex-Asia Minister Nigel Adams. There is no such thing as a safe seat these days, and it would take a real Boris loyalist to step aside for him, an ally of the ex-Prime Minister told GB News. Boris is an election winner, and I doubt he would want to break his winning streak. Now, above all else, guys, people who are clamouring and praying for the return of Boris Johnson obviously have very, very short memories indeed. Boris Johnson was the man who locked you in your house for nigh on 2 whole years, with a whole host of calamitous bullshit that we all had to go through during this time. Not being able to get into a doctor's office, for example, without wearing a fucking face nappy. Not being able to get groceries in from your local co-op or your local Asda without wearing a face nappy. Having to walk round aisles in supermarkets in a certain way to avoid contact with other people simply because someone had the fucking sniffles. And we of course had family members, old and young, dying alone in empty hospitals, while of course we had doctors and nurses making dancing TikToks and having a right good laugh, while Bessie and Mavis down the corridor were choking and dying on their ventilators and from COPD or whatever illness they were sadly dying from. And we of course had people who couldn't attend funerals of the people who sadly passed away in these empty hospitals, surrounded by dancing nurses and dancing doctors prancing round the place, thinking, oh, we are so full, we are so overburdened, while still taking the time out to do a fucking rendition of Glee. Absolutely hideous. Even the Queen of England didn't escape this fucking lunacy. She had to say goodbye to her husband in a cathedral, sat in the front row on her own, with no one there to comfort her. And we also have the Boris wave, my fucking God, the Boris wave of migration, which we are still feeling the effects of to this very day. Slung open the gates completely to every Tom, Dick and Harry, particularly people outside the EU, to come and have at it. We had numerous immigrants landing on the shores in Kent, dancing a rain dance on the fucking beaches while under a shower of £50 notes and pound coins hitting their fucking heads. To even contemplate having this man back in charge of the Conservative Party, or heaven forbid, back in number 10, is absolute fucking insanity, if you ask me. Now, I hold my hands up. Boris Johnson, as a person, does seem quite likeable. He's funny. He's bumbling. Can you imagine going for a drink with him? It'd be like going to the pub with an albino orangutan. But that's not enough to lead a political party. That is not enough to lead a country. You need balls, you need nous, you need IQ. You can't just get in there on popularity alone. And Boris Johnson only has that as his backing. Yes, he would win a few seats, but it wouldn't rescue the Conservative Party. If anything, it would sink it further and further into obscurity, which I suppose, looking at it logically, isn't necessarily a bad thing. Maybe he should come back as leader, but I tell you what, he will never ever make it back into number 10. That I can bet my bollocks to a barn dance on. That's my video, guys. Do let me know what you think in the comments as always. Are these people idiotic? Would you like to see the return of Boris Johnson? Do let me know, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.